So Bill Burr has been really killing it recently, redirecting people's real anger, real discontent, and alienation with the system towards the right people. For too long, we've been demonizing, scapegoating immigrants, trans people, but I think Bill Burr is a really important voice for really redirecting the real anger towards the real enemy, the parasites on society. And that's the billionaire class. It always has been, it always will be. And we've been letting them get away with it too long. So let's get into the video.
Like, by the way, I know everyone was freaking out about that tariff stuff and all of that and what it was doing to the stock market. And then everybody jumped in and it looked like just this big manipulation of the market so that rich people could get even richer. And then, poor people could still chant USA, USA at a UFC event. I literally do not understand what's going on. First of all, I might be wrong on this. This whole idea that other countries stole our jobs, like our factory jobs and all that, as far as I remember, that's not the case.
Yeah, China came in and they outsourced and moved all industry out of the UK and America. That's what they did. And there's nothing we could do. They just took it. They took all the factories. They flew. How did it happen? It's a mystery.
Here's a little quick history from someone who doesn't read a lot. In the 1800s, during the what was that period called? The Industrial Revolution. They had like kids working in factories, like fucking 12, 14-hour days, like 4 or 5-year-old kids in dangerous situations, and people weren't making any money. And the one guy who owned the factory was keeping all the money. These robber barons, who all should be in fucking jail. But politicians don't make any money, and they just throw them money, so they are on the legal side of stealing. No one's ever gone to jail for being a robber baron.
Even figures like reform, and the far right don't get this. That's why their analysis fails completely, because they think, oh, reform, UKIP, some far right. No, Farage has been bought. Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, the Integrity Party, they've also been bought. So this is where we need to redirect the narrative, the anger, the story towards the real enemy. And people get it. The average person does get it because they want to tax the wealthy. They want to redistribute wealth from the people at the top to the people at the bottom. That's what they want. But it's the right-wing media environment that convinces people like, no, it's immigrants. No, it's immigrants. How have people been convinced by the people at the top have all the power and money that it's the people at the bottom? It's the same old story. It's the same old divide and conquer. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. And why do people buy into it? It's because they're told constantly. Constantly.
Anyway, so the working man finally has enough. They start organizing unions. The robber barons hire police, the army, all of these people to come in and kill these people in riots, crack their skulls, do unbelievable sorts of damage to them to try and force them to go back to work for sweatshop wages. These people died, were maimed, catastrophic fucking injuries so that we could have a decent wage in this country. And they had unions and all of that. So then there was like a 40, 50-year period where being a middle-class person, middle-class white person, was the dream. Because there was still racism, classism, and all of that shit, right? Well, middle class is a class. You know what I mean? There was still racism, okay? And then what happened was eventually these corporations just got sick of dealing with these unions and their hard-nosed negotiating and all that. And then they just said, well, fuck you then. Keep your union, keep your factory. We're leaving. And they took the...
Yeah, throughout the 50s to the 70s, there was this liberal consensus where people doing well. 91 up to 93% taxes for the wealthiest. The wealth was actually trickling down. People had it good in America, and it was the golden age of capitalism. The golden age of capitalism, even in the UK, was when the wealth was distributed evenly. How ironic is that? And then we're in a position of 40 years, over the last 40 years, unions are dead, the wealthy have got wealthier, and now we're all being told that immigration, it's all trans, it's all culture war, which has been manufactured by the right, by the way. No one cared about trans people going to the toilets like 15 years ago. Trans people existed then. It's all manufactured. So we don't talk about how Facebook has so much power over the discourse, how they make so much money, how we live in a monopoly like Amazon, YouTube, Google, Facebook. There's very few companies that own most of what people interact with daily, like Unilever, these companies that just own so many, like Mars, like less Nestle, these companies, you've got like 50 companies that rule the world, fossil fuel companies, and we've let this happen. And then it's and then somehow it's immigrants' fault, it's refugees, it's asylum seekers. How? It's a completely irrational system.
Their factories outside of the U.S. and went back to 1800 wages in Mexico, China, wherever the hell they're building them. So then what happened was once people realized that that was happening, there was this pushback. This is all happened during my lifetime. People were like, what the fuck? You should be making those things here. And then what the corporate guy said was, well, you know, we would make sneakers here, but if to pay the American worker and everything, the sneakers would then, instead of costing $50, they'd now cost $700. And I was always thinking, why? It would cost $700. I can't afford that. And what it really was they weren't going to lose the profit of sweatshop labor. So if they came back to America, we weren't going to work for that. So, and they weren't going to lose the profit of sweatshop labor, so they were going to pass it on to the consumer. That's what the fuck happened. So all of this talk that, you know, Mexico stole our jobs, China stole our jobs, they didn't steal the jobs. They were exploited by the super rich cunts that are not patriots in this country. They're not. They're pieces of shit. So that's what the fuck happened. So, and then here we are all of these years later in an effort to get, you know, this labor to come back. We're somehow trying to punish these other countries who've been suffering with sweatshop labor from a handful of super rich people from this country that fucked everyone in this country and every other country that they went to around the world, making America look bad. But what do? They divide us. They have the American worker who's getting fucked, mad at the whatever other worker around the world who's also getting fucked, actually getting fucked worse, getting sweatshop slave wages. So I really believe that that was happening. And I don't understand what that whole fucking thing was, but all I know is once again, the market tanked and a bunch of rich people right before they...
Also, Donald Trump isn't bringing industry back. People really believe it. He ran on this in 2016, the idea that he's going to bring American manufacturing back. I don't think he believes it, but I think a lot of his base do. But it isn't happening. The investment to bring back factories, you've got to pay people real wages. It ain't happening. People are really reliant on cheap Chinese products. We're addicted to them. So, great, bring back manufacturing. And America, to be fair, does have manufacturing, way more than the UK. But Donald Trump got rid of the CHIPS Act, which I think was bringing at least 115,000 jobs, like high skilled jobs. That's what we need, especially in the UK, like high skilled jobs built for the future, built for the economy of the 21st century. But we can't even have this discussion in the UK. We can't have this discussion at all about what the economy is, because that's what politics used to be about. the economy. Like, how do we structure the economy? Like 100 years ago, Keynesianism, the idea that we tax the wealthy to invest in infrastructure and the public sector. That was, again, the consensus for years. And then the wealthy didn't like that. They were like, oh, we're not benefiting from this. People are too happy. Let's just ruin everything. Let's just ruin everything for everyone. Just make life worse for everyone. Even themselves. Like,
Turned it back on again, went in and made a ridiculous amount of money, and they're all high-fiving with each other. And I don't know, this guy told me something a long time ago. He says, when you watch the stock market and they
but it was so obvious the discord between what Trump was saying, make America great again, bring back jobs. Yes, he mentioned tariffs, but he didn't. I mean, he's lying there. He's lying. He's not going to bring back American jobs. He just wanted to basically cause a recession to then eat up cheap stock prices. This is what they always do. It was an obvious lie. This is what fascists do. They lie. They sell you a lie. They sell you this great package of everything's going to be okay if you just have faith in me. And then the reality is always different. It always has been. But people buy into it because, like, oh no, you know, I've bought into the lie, the big lie. And it's depressing. It's really depressing because this is not inevitable. It's a product of neoliberalism. It's ironically the product of the system itself that leads people to this, where they go, oh, this system that's caused the problem, maybe we need more of it to solve it. And ultimately, it's a failure of the left to give a viable alternative. But we live in capitalist realism where, to the average person, this is it. There is no alternative. There is no alternative. We just have to kind of tinker around the edges, a bit more welfare. If we just cut disability benefits a little bit and just cut this and reduce the debt a little bit, everything. No, we need a complete paradigm shift. And we've needed it to since 2008. But people aren't angry enough yet. People aren't angry enough. They're angry, but not to the point where they go, actually, Farage is not the answer. Trump is not the answer.
go like, $2 billion was lost today. He's like, money isn't lost. Like, where did it go? That's just how they frame it. It isn't lost. It changes hands. All right, that's enough of that shit. Enough of that shit. It's just an astoundingly greedy and ignorant time these last 10 fucking years. Not even 10, these last 20 fucking years. Whenever we went into Iraq.
So that's it. That's the situation now. Neoliberalism is the problem. The resurgence of the far right over the last 30 years, since the 90s at least, is the symptom. How do we convince people? I think people like Gary Stevenson are doing good jobs, Jimmy the Giant talking about inequality, but we're being overshadowed by a whole in media environment that says, no, it's transit, it's immigration, it's wokeness, it's the culture war. And this is why, hopefully, if you enjoy the work I'm doing, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video.